Hi, I'm Brian Johnson. I'm the publisher of MassDevice.com, and I'm here today with Philipp Lang, the CEO of ConforMIS, which is the maker of the only patient-specific knee replacement implant on the market today. Phil, if you could take us back before you founded the company in 2004, what was the genesis of the idea behind ConforMIS?
The genesis was that there are too many compromises today in knee replacement, and in fact in other forms of joint replacement. So if you look at how this was practiced in 2004 and how it is practiced in 2012, it in fact has basically not changed. So what it means for the surgeon is every single time in every surgery confronted with having to find compromises, having to oversize one condyle, the inside of the knee, versus undersize the outside of the knee, or vice versa, having to make compromises on the shape of the device. And what this translates down to is issues with patient satisfaction. What are their complaints? Their complaints are they have pain after surgery, they have difficulty walking downstairs, they have limited range of motion, they can't get back to the same type of physical activity that they had before they had arthritis. So that's just a summary of some of the issues. If you look at the principal thought behind all of this was we want to correct any underlying deformity, bonies, knock-knees, so we go back to normal mechanical alignment of the joint. But then we want to recreate the anatomy that the patient had prior to developing arthritis. And the hypothesis behind that was if we can, rather than taking a fixed symmetric shape with constant radii, well, no human knee has constant curvatures or constant radii, every patient is different. If we can go back and recreate something close to the patient's original anatomy, corrected for deformity, we should get a much better clinical result, we should get a much better functional result.
What were some of the limitations or questions you faced when you brought this idea before investors and physicians, surgeons?
So there were a number of key hurdles that we had to face. The first hurdle that we saw as we started out with early commercialization, so looking back at 2008, was that we had historically started out with a partial knee approach. But so literally looking at the market dynamic, our initial implants could only address 10% of the available market. That said, the technology per se was so disruptive and the concept was so compelling that for those companies that published that data for the last 3 years, 12 quarters consecutively in a row, we have been on average the fastest growing company in the entire space. But so we had an intrinsic limitation in accessible market, which we addressed now with the introduction of ITotal. Initially in limited release, which started in May of 2012, and we've done a couple of thousand surgeries in limited release, working with a broad range of surgeons. And then in September 15, we actually went into full commercial launch with what we call the ITotal G2. And now we can address the largest market segment in knee replacement and in fact in orthopedics in general. The second major challenge that we had, and for full disclosure that we didn't foresee when we started out with the company, was the scalability. Traditional manufacturing, you would take a block of plastic and you would cut this with a CNC milling machine. The process that we're using today is a process where basically a 3D printing machine lays down a layer of nylon powder, 50 or 100 microns typically, and then a high energy laser zips across that layer of nylon, melts it. The next layer is being laid down, another layer is being melted, and so in an additive fashion, layer by layer is being added. And what you get out of this is ultimately disposable instrument that you see here that's generated with an additive manufacturing process, 3D printing, that was manufactured in this fashion. And so the fact that this new technology is available now for manufacturing, that was key to our scale-up. And that's really what supports and sustains our scale-up. So we have really across all manufacturing functions. We have basically a cellular manufacturing approach where we look at our quarterly or 6 months forecast. We look how we are growing, and we know the capacity that we can get out of one existing machine. We're just adding machines as we grow.
How is ConforMIS's customized implant different from the current standard of care with knee replacement surgery?
Our technology is different in that every knee is customized. There's no more compromise. There's no oversizing. There's no underhang. If you look at this, for example, in this bone model, we're looking at it from the back, you can see that this medial condyle, the inside of the knee, is very wide, while the lateral condyle is very narrow. If I had a standard implant, I would likely be too small medially, and I would overhang laterally in this area here, causing soft tissue impingement and pain. So those compromises are addressed comprehensively. They don't happen anymore. I think the other key compromise that we know the surgeon has to do with every single surgery is he is putting in my right hand a standard implant. He's putting a perfectly symmetrical implant into a highly asymmetrical joint. What's the result? The result shows for the surgeon intraoperatively that the surgeon has difficulty to make the ligaments of the patient work, and he has to go through a process called ligament balancing, which means he has to cut ligaments, he has to cut soft tissue. The joint doesn't give you enough flexion, so he cuts more soft tissue trying to get more flexion here. And he will never get the type of motion that the patient had prior to the surgery. And what is very impressive is that when you look at the preliminary data at 6 weeks after surgery, close to 70% of patients report back that the knee feels natural. They can't tell the difference to the unoperated knee. When you look at them 1 year after surgery, 85% of patients report they can't tell the difference, and that's really unprecedented. We have very similar feedback on the ITotal, where again we have less experience because we just started on a limited release in May of last year, but again we've done a couple of thousand procedures, but we have that type of feedback. In summary, when we look at knee replacement done today using standard devices, the patient is being fitted to the implant. What we do, we take each individual patient and we fit the implant individually to the patient, and that's truly unique.